when you're on the line or anything like that, but I can go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Rose. Comes at night. I am the State Conservationist for the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and we do appreciate you joining us. We were really hoping we could have gotten to do this in public or in face-to-face, but under the circumstances, we're going to try this and see what happens. So you guys are our first group for trying a producer meeting by webinar, and so please give us good questions, good feedback, and good information as we go forward in today's webinar and session. We wanted to pass on to you and really pass on some information about the new farm bill. Under 2018, the new farm bill was passed. There are quite a few changes to each and every program as far as there's a lot of final tweaks with. I think one of the things that you're going to see in this process as we go through the presentation today, you're going to see that we do now have new tools. For example, the field offices now have a new conservation planning system called Conservation Desktop. The old system has basically been actually taken offline just here in the last 2 months. And so now there's a new system that is more computer friendly, it's more user friendly, it's more connected so that we can actually put information in one location and then populate other areas, and so that the staff is saving a tremendous amount of time that way. The one thing you're going to see in this farm bill, it asks us to streamline in many, many, many ways. And one way that you're going to see that we're starting to transition towards is we're looking at one application, one conservation plan, and one contract. We're not there yet, but we're going that direction this year. And I think that's the biggest thing you're going to hear us talk about is that this year is truly, truly a transition year for us. We also have a second tool that we'll talk to you about called the Conservation Assessment Ranking Tool, CART. Is the new terminology you'll hear for that, which basically does an assessment of your operation and your situation based on the data that the planners have collected, and then it actually then converts that information into our ranking tool for programs. We're going to talk to you about the changes in our funding pool and how this new process, new system, is going to downsize our funding pool. Before our funding pools, we had at one time in the state, we had 188 different fund pools. That caused a lot of work for us as a state because we were having to manage every fund pool down to the penny. So now we're looking at reducing the number of fund pools, and this year we've been able to cut those fund pools quite a bit down, and Keeper's going to go with those too, and that you can see. So with that, we're again going to walk you through some of the changes in the farm bill. I think you're going to see the good changes in a lot of cases. You're going to see where a lot of our systems are transitioning so that our system will be helping with FSA system. That's where we're trying to go to. You're going to see where we're really, really trying to simplify a lot of things and really trying to make this more customer friendly. And that is our number one target is to try and make our programs, again, more customer friendly. So with that being said, I want to check with Lori and make sure we're going to that adjustment warning that you can see, and then I'll hand it over to Keith.
So let's get people on, and we'll call on the agenda for project and that lecture link that we will send out after the webinar is over. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump in anytime and see more questions after the session at the end of our class.
Thanks, Lori. And we do have a nice little book that we put together, and we've got that information available to you through a link where you can go and actually see all the different presentations and things like that too. So you have that as a reference here. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Keith Griswold, our new Assistant State Conservationist for Programs. Keith came on board
August.
In August. And I'm greatly appreciative. I know he's having to go through really coaching the staff through these new transitions and these new changes. So,
all right. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. As Roylene has stated, we are in a brand new Farm Bill this year, and with the new Farm Bill comes some new opportunities for change to improve our systems. With all change requires a little bit of growing pain, a little bit of things not working the way it used to or how it did before. In the 2002 Farm Bill, this occurred also. I was with the agency at that time, and we learned ProTrax was our new computer software system that we had never used before. And so we've seen this before. Change is always difficult. And when the agency is developing new software programs and new methods on how to develop contracts and deliver assistance out in the field, it requires a little bit of growing pains and also requires a little bit of trial and error. And that is where we are at this year. We've had a couple of our programs go through so far this year. We've worked with FSA on the CSP GCI program, and here recently we finished the ranking for the CSP renewals. So when I start to talk about some of these slides, we've already started working through some of our programs and through our applications, and so some of the slides might be out of date because these were developed in January. But at least it provides you the information where we're at. So, contracting timelines. Where are we at for this year? Where are we going? We have an application workflow of our system that we're looking at. We had to develop templates for our new assessment and ranking software system. As Roylene had mentioned, it was CART. We have to set it up for each program. What headquarters, what Congress, what the new Farm Bill require is streamlining to reduce duplicative events so that we can reduce the workload not only for the participant but for our staff in order to deliver the program. So a lot of our contracting manual all got combined. Our cost rates, a lot of them got combined. Eligibility for programs, a lot of it got combined. And so, I think I have, but let's see if it's, how about that? There we go, sorry. Once again, computer issues this morning. I'm working on a computer that is not mine. So, but we are working on the development of all the software information inside of our programs for each state. We then had to create a schedule. Get something here. See if I can make this work. There we go. We had to develop a schedule for the staff in order to put the programs out, whether it be EQIP, CSP, RCPP. So the field office have a workload prioritization depending on what program we're working on, and we had to look at what are the priority resource concerns for CSP. We're also looking at what assessments have already occurred on the farm. A lot of our stuff right now is looking for planning first, so you're going to hear that quite often. The field office working with the landowners have to create a schedule in our software, whether it was Toolkit or in the new planning software, Conservation Desktop. And then through CART, we assess it. So they look at the land use, the resource concerns, the existing conditions that are out there. existing conservation practices, if they are historical and do they still function or are they not functioning. And then look at if we installed new conservation practices, would it get the participant to solve the resource concern. They then rank the practices that were selected to solve the resource concern, and it looks at cost estimates for each funding pool, and then determines, depending on the score the conservation practice gets, what application and what practice would be selected for contracting. Then here's how it works in the state office. We have a new tool. This is the year of new tools. Myself and Alan Folk work with the Select Agreement tool, or SAT. And we select, depending on the ranking of the applications and what fund pool they've been ranked to, what conservation practices will be selected for funding. We then move those conservation practices to a pre-approved application and then provide it back to the field office. The field office then works on completing the pre-approved application process, finalizing the plan, developing the maps, working on the job sheets, and then it goes to back to the state office for us to approve for funding once the participant signs it. Now, the next slide I'm going to show you is something that headquarters provided to us at training, and it talks about this optimal timeline. What I do want everybody to understand is this was a convergence of unfortunate times, unfortunate activities, but it is where we're at. So the new Farm Bill allowed us to function in fiscal year 19 under the old Farm Bill and gave the agency 1 year to get everything squared away. And that was fiscal year 20 that started in October of 2019. But from then, it went that all of the programs had to go out to the Federal Register with their new rules and have a comment period on. And we couldn't contract or do any work until that comment period's over. And so for a lot of our programs, whether it was EQIP, CSP, the announcement went out in either December or January, and they had to be open for 30 days or open for 60 days for comments, and it wasn't until the open period shut that we could start doing our contracting. So that put us basically in the middle of February for CSP and the beginning of March for EQIP of when we could even look to start contracting. And that is almost at the end of the second quarter of the federal fiscal year. So typically where we would have time to plan with new applications, time to go through and rank applications and look at everything, we had a half of the year taken away from us because of how everything lined up with the Farm Bill and announcing of the federal rules. So with that leads us to this optimum timeline of where headquarters said this is how your new workflow will work. And so for every program, there's a sign-up period announcement for 30 days. And then they gave the field office 15 days to screen every application, 30 days to rank the application and develop a cost estimate. Then we look at ranking across all applicable fund pools. And that's mostly for EQIP, because if you apply for CSP, you're applying for a zone that you're in, and you don't work across multiple fund pools. But with EQIP, you do. Then there's a 15-day to finalize the cost estimates, and then 15 days for the state office to pre-select what applications and or what conservation practices will be selected for funding. 45 days to finalize the plan and finalize the contract in protracts, and then 30-day obligation time period. So that really puts a real quick time frame on the development of a contract and getting it to the producer. A lot of our timelines, we're hitting that now. This 30-day time period, tomorrow we will have the CSP Classic announcement, and hitting these dates that are there puts us at the end of the fiscal year. It puts us at like September 20th in order to get this done. So you start to see that we are in a crunch time frame this fiscal year due to a lot of issues. Are there any questions on this year's timeline? All right, I'm not hearing any. So I'm going to move on to... What was that? For CSP Classic? It opens tomorrow. And what I would tell you, for CSP Classic, first of all, you need to make sure your FSA eligibility is taken care of with FSA so that you have a 80-1026 filled with them. That if you're signing up as a business or an entity, that your 901 or 902 is correctly there for both signature authority and to document who has the ability to make the decision for the entity. You need to make sure your farm and tract is established with FSA, and also turn in your AGI form for fiscal year 20, and that form is the 941 form with FSA. Those are the basic requirements for FSA eligibility. But also with the CSP program, and this is within policy, you have to provide a map to NRCS of what all lands are eligible for the program and your application. So I'd advise you when you go into the FSA office, make sure your FSA eligibility is correct. Swing by the NRCS office and talk with them about your application for the CSP program. Oh. The sign-up is for 30 days. And Roy Lee wanted me to remind you, you need to call and schedule for an appointment due to how the service centers are managing COVID-19 issues that when you come into the office, there is a new protocol for COVID-19. So you need to call and schedule an appointment with the conservation or with NRCS. Sorry about that. If your CSP contract is set to expire at the end of the fiscal year for 2020, yes, you would still sign up because we would obligate it or get it squared away to start up at the end of that fiscal year. Any other questions?
volume as high as possible, and then manage not too much feedback on
Yeah, please use the phone to us for asking a question. Because we can hear a lot of chatter on this one. All right, if no other questions, I'm going to move on to the CART Conservation Assessment Ranking Tool. So why is NRCS changing to CART? Well, as we have stated before, Congress has dictated us in the new Farm Bill to streamlining of our programs, streamlining of our program delivery, streamlining of our service has been dictated to us in many forms. The Farm Bill mentions it 16 times. The Secretary has also mentioned it. He's looking not only at streamlining of programs, but increased efficiency with the staff that we have. Our NRCS chief is also looking at it, of streamlining for program delivery and customer service. And not only that, our partners, our field staff, our customers are all asking us to streamline our programs. And so that's why we are moving this direction with everything. So under our previous ranking system, it was AERT. How did it work for contracting? Well, this is where it was not streamlined. So for every funding pool that a participant wanted to apply for in the EQIP program, our field staff had to ask or answer 55 questions for every fund pool. And that was on average nationwide. So you can see that if you applied for 2 or 3 or even 4 different fund pools, depending on what land uses you have on your property and what resource concerns you have, that added a lot of time for our field staff to answer the questions, the same questions, multiple times. And so here's an example of how a typical application would come through previously. We'd have one application, but the participant was interested in the high tunnel and forestry, and then say a local working group concern. If you don't know, we have local working group fund pools that the local working group decides what is the resource concern within their area that is most important to treat. So in this case, we had to divide this application up into 3 applications. One for the high tunnel fund pool, one for the forestry fund pool, and one for the local working group fund pool. And if they were all awarded, we'd have 3 different contracts: high tunnel contract, a forestry contract, and a local working group concern contract. That requires 3 contracts to manage, not only for us, but the participant. It also requires some contractual requirements. So you have 3 contracts now that are required to have one practice within that contract installed within the first 12 months. So that set the participant up that they had to install, under this scenario, 3 different conservation practices in 1 year in order to keep every contract in compliance. So you can see where it was inefficient contracting, duplication of documents, confusion of what contract that they had to work on first. And so this is where we see the inefficiencies in the previous system. So how is CART going to work this year for contracting? So in this case, the landowner and the planner only have to answer the questions once in order to determine what fund pool they're eligible for. And in this case, they're able to look to see if we're looking at water quality, water conservation. It's going through all of our priority resource concerns that we're looking at to determine where they're eligible. And in this case, then it determines, well, for EQIP, in this example, they have 3 different fund pools that they're eligible for practices to be funded. And out of those 3 fund pools, they were able to go in and select the residue management, the windbreak, the filter strip, and the nutrient management to be put into one contract. So, go ahead. Oh. Yeah.
Basically, the field officers have to go out or partners or those that are helping us and look at more, basically did an inventory or an assessment of their situation based on the criteria that we have, and then it would then tell us how close to the benchmark you are or not here. And the idea was, for example, on this example, if you look on here, say you can see some of the items that are a little bit below, like say air quality is a little bit below, maybe that's something that we look at EQIP to do, and then the one that's way above, like the soil quality or soil health one, this particular producer happens to be way over, and maybe that's something that we could roll right into something like CSP. So we're hoping to get to a point in a place where we no longer will have to do kind of do stuff and starts between our programs, between EQIP and CSP and things like this, based on what the land is telling us out there based on that assessment. And then we can go in and look at the fact that you can see up to the gray box up to where the blue bubble is, they actually apply for multiple funding pools. So what the target is that you won't, there will be a point in time where you won't even know where your funds are coming from. We'll worry about that. That's not something you need to worry about. All you'll know is that, for example, one program may be, or one practice or quality may pay for a certain practice over here. Another, say the local work group fund pool may pay for another practice over here that you're doing. And so you could actually get practices out of multiple fund pools. And because of that is why we've had to go through a more of a statewide funding pool process, because we have to be able to manage that fund pool and keep staff gets to do all of that good stuff now. So it's kind of narrative so that this is all coming up to the program staff to make sure that all of those fund pools have the adequate amount of funding in them. Still is another thing that we're managing. But again, what we're going to be really looking at is funding processes and not necessarily looking at funding the whole conservation kind of stuff. So quite a bit of change in how we've done things before. This is something we're going to see more and more. So one question we got at one of the meetings was, could I apply and actually only get one practice paid for this year? The answer is yes. And kind of like we used to know in the past, the ACP program, the annual conservation program, we can still do that too, that there might be a chance that that's the only practice we pay for. And then next year we might come and look at your plan and say, okay, next year we're going to put in for these other things. So this gives us a lot more flexibility to be able to really work with you to really see your circumstances, situation, and help get the practice that you can afford and the practices that will have the best effect.
All right. Thank you. So what does CART do? CART's going to create a plan assessment for multiple conservation practices and then determine under multiple ranking pools of where they can be funded into one contract, as Roylene had stated. CART assures that we're not going to duplicate practice on the same land unit from separate funding sources. It's going to eliminate over 30,000 duplicate applications nationwide. So these are some of the time savings that we're looking at. And it eliminates repeat questions. So this is the improved efficiency that we're looking at. So using the previous example that I showed you of how we had worked last fiscal year and the years prior, in this case now, using the same resource concerns, we'd only have one application. It would look at the high tunnel part, the forestry part, and the local working group concern part, but combine it into one contract. This makes the efficiency of managing contracts improved. It reduces confusion. It streamlines. And also, it's a benefit to the producer because in the previous example, in order for the producer to stay compliant with their contract, they had to install one practice within 12 months. On this one, they still have to install one practice within 12 months, but they get to choose, which one am I going to do? Am I going to do the high tunnel first, or the forestry, or the local working group concern? But I only have to install one of these three within the first 12 months in order to keep my contract compliant. Any questions on that?
So the good news is, one thing that we started transitioning towards this year is actually coming out on the operation and doing the assessment a couple of years ago. So it's not like an assessment and actually going out there and running your operations through the checklist that we have as new to the staff. They've been doing this. We were trying to get ahead of the game and making sure that we had time to really understand the tool, how it works as part of the assessment part. What is new is the actual database that we're putting the assessment information into at this time. But staff have been actually doing what we call the CDSI worksheet for a couple of years now, and really looking at doing the conservation planning first. And that's the other thing you're going to find with this is the more that you can have the conservation plan done ahead of time before this, basically it's really going to help the situation, especially with headquarters giving us short 30-day timelines at this point. So again, some of the stuff this year as far as timelines, most of the timelines we have not chosen in the program at this point. We're getting told these are the deadlines for this year. So hopefully we don't have this for the next year.
All right. Before I move on, I wanted to make sure that there was no other questions on how CART works or how it looks at ranking.
Or is it more looking to reach out to know what's available in that area?
Well, there are the local working group fund pools are specific to each team, NRCS team within the state. We have 12 local working group fund pools. There's 11 teams, and then our tribal local working group. And so depending on where you're located, you'd be eligible for your EQIP application to be looking to see what those local working group resource concerns are, if you have them, and then would it be available for possible contracts. So once again, I would tell you to schedule an appointment with your local or NRCS office to have a discussion with the DC or a planner, a soil con or a range con in there to see where you're at and to see what you're eligible for.
We've been highly encouraged to get our funds pulled down to 10. I have some not to at this point in time because I think it's important that the local work group be able to have those funds to be able to really target specific resource concerns that are just for their local area. So at this point, I'm going to hold tight until I get the order otherwise. But at this point, we've made the decision to have a local work group fund besides the mandatory national funds and the state funds. So we're holding tight on it right now. So there are a lot of diversity as far as the fund pool, and I believe we will go through.
I do.
I think so. One of the presentations, he starts with the fund pool. So we'll show you the fund pool. This cover is very diverse. That's your quality. We've got sage grass. We've got all of these kinds of irrigation. We've tried to be fairly broad on the statewide pool so that we could be very inclusive of the resource concerns that we're aware of in the state, but also you still will have your local work group funds that are specific to your specific
support this area?
So let you guys know, we talked about streamlining headquarters. Their goal is to try and lump a lot of things together. And to a large degree we have. As Lorraine stated, we used to have 180 plus fund pools in this state. Last year we had 118. This year we're down to 43. So we've made major strides in our streamlining of the fund pools that are available. We still have the same amount of money that we've received, but we've also noticed that some of the previous fund pools we had hadn't been used in 3 or 4 years. So there was a reason for us to streamline and remove those just because of inactivity. It doesn't mean that the resource concern isn't there. It just means that we did not have any applications that wanted to put in for that fund pool. But we'll talk about that here on one of the future slides. So I'm going to talk about some of the changes, and these are the changes to both the EQIP and the CSP program, and talk about what they are from the new Farm Bill and from headquarters. So if you don't know, CSP is our program that helps producers maintain and improve their existing conservation system, and it's for working lands. It's to bring lands out of the basically EQIP program of where we're fixing problems. The CSP program is there for producers to earn payments for a higher level of conservation performance. And so for this year, for the new Farm Bill, CSP, here are a couple of the big changes. Public land that's associated to your eligible operation is now allowed to be enrolled into the program. In the previous Farm Bill, if you had a range allotment or you had a DNR lease, it could not be included in your operation for the CSP program. Under this Farm Bill, it can be. So in Washington, we have a lot of DNR ground that is leased out, that is cropland. If they apply for CSP for their entire operation, they can enroll their leased land as long as they have effective control during the contract period.
So one of the things we are doing is partnership is actually working on setting up a meeting with DNR, and we're working with DNR not only on the fire option and maybe adding that on the standard to our practice standard list, but we're also going to talk to them about this particular how to pass it. Who signs the signature? Who can be covering on these different producer ones to include their public land? So we're going to try to work through that process.
One of the other big changes that is there is if you are an eligible participant that has an existing CSP contract and you choose not to renew it, there is a 2-year sit-out period from the expiration of their initial contract. Now, if you apply for a renewal and don't get selected, you do not have to sit out that 2 years. But if you choose not to renew your CSP application or your contract, then you will have to sit out 2 years before you can reapply for the system or for the program.
What happens if you expired last year?
What contract year did you have a CSP? Was it under 2014?
And it was a 3-year program.
Was it CSP or EQIP?
It was CSP.
Okay. Most CSPs are 5 years. That's why I was asking if it was EQIP. Okay.
My last payment was
Okay. So if you did not sign up for a renewal, So that sounds to me like you had a 6-year extension, and that was a way to allow you to meet the eligibility requirements of this. So, yes, under the program rules, you would have been required to maintain your practices and still be under an active contract but not receive a payment that year. And that would have made you eligible then for a CSP renewal. But if you did not accept that 6-year extension and you let your contract expire, then I do believe you're going to have to sit out for 2 years. If you kept your 6-year or did your 6-year mod and kept your contract active, then you were eligible for a renewal. You were eligible for the renewal.
Okay. So I think I got everything right with that. I don't worry about it until they come to know.
Okay.
But I think I'm okay. It's just I know my last meeting last year, I don't recall the 6-year renewal. I didn't come back in and look at that.
Once again,
I'm not sure that was to me for added 6 years.
well, once again, I'm going to tell you, not having knowledge of your contract and where you're at, I'm going to advise you to contact the local NRCS office and schedule an appointment to determine where you're at with your eligibility and program participation.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Under this new farm bill, the farmstead and the associated ag land, or the AAL, as long as it meets or exceeds the resource concerns at the time of the contract offer, they don't need to schedule additional activities on this land. Under the previous farm bill, you had to do that. So this is a reduced requirement now under the new program. For CSP renewal applications, the applicant must, by the end of the contract, agree to meet or exceed the stewardship threshold for at least two additional priority resource concerns on your ag operation, and implement new or improve existing conservation activities to a higher level of conservation for a minimum of 2 priority resource concerns that were either met or exceeded at the initial contract. They removed the $40,000 annual payment limitation requirement in the contract, so you could have a contract that could receive $80,000 or $100,000 the first year, depending on how the contract is set up. But they still have a $200,000 aggregate payment limitation for the CSP contract. They also allow for a comprehensive conservation plan to be developed under the CSP program. We haven't received any rules yet or information on that, but that is a new item that will be available probably for the fiscal year 21. Are there any questions on CSP? All right. The EQIP program, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. This is kind of our workhorse program where we're looking at working with farmers and ranchers to improve their operations, where you have resource concerns on there that are not meeting quality criteria. Where we're looking to protect and improve your soil, water, air, and other resources on your working lands. Brand new to this farm bill, it allows water management entities to be able to apply for the EQIP program. Basically, that's an irrigation district, a groundwater district, anybody that has legal jurisdiction to deliver water to eligible lands is now eligible to apply for the program, the EQIP program. Source water protection. So within the new Farm Bill, it was identified that where agriculture can, they could help the rest of the U.S. on protecting source water, whether that be surface or groundwater. In eastern and central Washington, a lot of that is groundwater that can work to help to protect, whether it be for groundwater contaminants, whether it be nitrogen or phosphorus, or it could be surface water for E. coli or other nutrients or sediments. But we're looking at specific practices that address water quantity and quality to targeted areas that are for community water systems. And in this case, we're allowed to offer up to 90% payment rates for these practices within these priority areas. Under the new Farm Bill, a veteran now is considered a historically underserved client. Veterans or historically underserved clients receive a higher payment rate on their practices. It is a 90% payment rate compared to the regular 75. They can elect to receive an advance payment. Advance payments are only for historically underserved clients. And the veterans definition includes veterans who have been discharged in the most recent year period. So for our Vietnam and Korea participants, I'm sorry, you're not eligible for this veterans preference. That is a law that was set up by Congress, but I do want to thank you for your service. For advance payments for historically underserved participants, it authorizes up to at least 50% of the practice payment to be provided to the historically underserved client for them to purchase and expend funds for a specific CIN or contract item number. They have to expend all of their funds within 90 days in order to stay compliant, and they have to provide receipts to NRCS to show that all of the funds were expended. So where I talked about the veterans have to be within a 10-year period, if you answer or self-certify on the 1200 application for the program that you're a veteran answer, it's going to ask the NRCS staff to enter the date of discharge. So client or field staff could be asking about a DD-214 for those of you that are retired or veterans that have been honorably discharged. It'll ask what that discharge date is. If it's not within that 10-year period, you will not be eligible for the veteran farmer or rancher. You may be eligible, though, for the other historically underserved participants of beginning farmer rancher, socially disadvantaged, or limited resource producer. So also the new Farm Bill changes that are there is the Farm Bill payment limitation is not cumulative with other Farm Bills. So if you have a contract from the 2014 Farm Bill, your payments received from here on out do not go against your $450,000 cap for this Farm Bill. They're two separate Farm Bills. The organic payment limitation increased from $80,000 to $140,000, and there is no annual payment limitation. It used to be $20,000 per year for the $80,000. Please mute your phone. It used to be there was a $20,000 annual payment limitation that is no longer there. For your contracts, it's $450,000 contract limit to a person or a legal entity for the life of the Farm Bill. But if you're a joint operation or a group project, you may be eligible for contracts up to $900,000 payment limitation. Are there any questions for the EQIP program and the changes that occurred within this Farm Bill?
Maybe I'm probably saying you with this signal, if I heard it correctly. If that person can jump back on question.
There might be a phone that is muted too. All right, I'm not hearing one. Is there anything else for EQIP? All right, well then we will talk about an addition to the Farm Bill. Under the new Farm Bill, it allows for priority conservation practices to receive a 90% payment rate schedule and what we are calling the top 10 practices. All right, keep working. There we go. And basically what they're looking at under the new Farm Bill is to increase the adoption of these practices and where they're looking at applying them at. So the State Technical Committee, along with NRCS, works to determine what practices are not being adopted at a good rate, but if we increase the payment rate from 75 to 90% would be more attractive for their adoption. So the requirements that were put on NRCS and the STAC, the State Technical Advisory Committee, is that they must address these specific causes. So impairment related to excessive nutrients in ground or surface water, conservation of water for drought mitigation or declining aquifers, meet other environmental priorities or identified resource concerns or habitat or restoration plans, or be a geographically targeted area to address the natural resource concern within a watershed or defined area. So Washington looked to bundle these practices to basically tie it into the requirements of what the program allows. So in this case, are proposed at one time, but now have been accepted by the STAC in our March meeting, are top 10 practices throughout the state that everybody that applies for these practices in EQIP and has them in their contract will receive 90% payment rate, is aquatic organism passage, upland wildlife habitat management, riparian forest buffer, forest stand improvement, tree and shrub establishment, waste storage facility, field borders, cover crops, residue and tillage management, no-till, and conservation cover. So if anywhere in the state, if you have a participant that has applied for EQIP and is selected for contracting, no matter if they're a historically underserved client or not, if they have these conservation practices in their contract application, they will receive 9% payment rate. Any questions on the top 10 practices? All right, we will move on to the last presentation then. So as I talked about previously, we talked, one gentleman asked a question about his CSP application. We're going to look at FSA eligibility requirements, our conservation planning intake summary, and our EQIP screening tools. So for all NRCS programs, EQIP, CSP, it requires FSA eligibility be met, and that's a statutory requirement in the Farm Bill. So an AB 1026 for the participant, farm and tract eligibility, and adjusted gross income. They all need to be filed. Once you file an AB 1026 or farm and tract eligibility, unless you do have a reconstitution or you purchase new land, those things are pretty much set in stone. But every year you're going to apply for a program, you have to fill out a new adjusted gross income form. So when an NRCS staff person is working within ProTrax to determine if their participant that's applied for the program has met these requirements, we have a nice pop-up window that's tied directly to FSA's database that shows the status of each of these three requirements. And so this is an example of what it looks like for us working in ProTrax. In this case, it shows that the AB 1026 is filed as a yes, their farm and tract eligibility is a yes, and their AGI for that fiscal year has been processed and is a yes. So as I had stated at the very beginning of the presentation, that we are under a condensed time schedule. Washington NRCS for fiscal year 20 has decided to utilize a data collection tool in order to help us process our applications this year and to reduce, due to the reduced contracting season we have. So for any of the participants that applied for EQIP, you had to turn in this conservation intake summary. This information was provided on the state webpage, and for any of the existing EQIP applications we had from previous years, a letter went out to participants informing them of this requirement. If you did not turn in the producer intake summary, or it wasn't filled out completely, it resulted in a medium screening for the application management. And once again, it comes back to we have a condensed time frame, and we have to be able to take all the information that is for your farm and put it into the CART assessment and ranking tools in order to get our contracts put out this fiscal year in a short time frame. Roylene, this was also posted online, wasn't it? Okay. So this is the planning intake summary form, and it would go through your entire operation depending on what you have. You know, it's going to ask questions if you have livestock, do you irrigate, do you have rain plans, forestry, what are your objectives for your agricultural operation, what resource concerns do you see out on the ground that you want to get fixed or work on fixing on your property. So it's really vital information for our planners to be able to receive this in this short time frame to be able to determine if we can get you into the EQIP application period this year. We also use a screening tool that looks at the information that is available. So what you're going to see in there, in that first paragraph, it asks, is the participant FSA eligible? If they're not, you don't screen them. In years past, we basically handheld participants through the system when we had a full year to work on it. This year, we did not have the luxury to provide that assistance. So you already had to be FSA eligible in order to apply for the EQIP program. And this is the bottom part of the screening tool, so you can see what questions you looked at. If you had a EQIP contract in the past 3 years that were terminated for cause, you would screen low. If you were an applicant that had an active contract and you were not on schedule and it wasn't due to NRCS's fault, we would put you at low. If you were an applicant that was on a CPA 153 and was still out of compliance, CPA 153 is our non-compliance form for participants that are behind schedule. But if you were on a 153 and still out of compliance, you would screen low. And then this is brand new to the Farm Bill that allows us to ask this question. If you had an existing contract, whether it was active, completed, canceled, or terminated, and you did not meet the operation and maintenance requirements for the conservation practice previously funded through EQIP, we could screen you low. And here's the classic example that we've seen. We would have a high tunnel contract, and they would install the high tunnel, and it was a singular practice contract, and once that was done, the contract was completed. Well, they would come in a year or two later and ask for another high tunnel through another EQIP contract, and when we'd go out there and take a look at it, they were using the existing high tunnel to store their firewood or to park their boat or something else. And that, in that case, that conservation practice, the high tunnel, was good for 5 years. They didn't meet the lifespan of it. They chose to do something different, and so that would screen them low. If they did not send in the producer intake form or it wasn't filled out completely, they'd screen as a medium. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't contract with you as a medium, but we look at contracting our applications that are high, medium, and we do not contract with our low screened applicants. Any questions for our screening tool that we're using this year?
So to provide some clarification to my pieces, these are the tools that we're using this fiscal year. At the local work meetings that were scheduled to come out, and I believe Nick Vera is on this year's partnership with, and he's going to how the local work group is going to function this year, and how we're going to put that information. Also, at the state technical committee meeting that's going to come up in June, we're going to start setting the standards and the criteria for next year's program year. We're hoping that we can start to do the sign-up periods and working with you earlier than we were able to do this year because of the finalizing of the Farm Bill rules. And that way it will give not only you more time, but it will also give us more time to be able to work with you to make sure that we can get things into the system correctly. So we're wanting to kind of start moving forward here in the next 2 months and start setting the criteria for next year. So with the 90% practices, again, those could be changed. The looking at the screening tools, we can relook at those and things like that. But we're going to work through the local work group process. So Nick, do you want to explain what's going to happen with the process?
Sure. This year, because of our self-certified trying to find innovative new ways to conduct the meetings. Those local working groups are established or led by the chairperson of the local working group, which is usually a conservation district. So those folks are in the driver's seat with assistance from NRCS. So in some cases, if they're not available, NRCS will serve them within their methods and tactics. So what they are doing to assist in the collection of the data that they're looking for is so they're looking at common surveys that the working group can just send out and participants with information on their recommendations. Because of the timing of this year, we're not going to have all of the results. So that was like all how many contracts are obligated under this resource funding pool, but they will be presenting kind of year recommendations so everybody can see what has happened. I don't mention have a chance for their input on a variety of things, mainly to largely to establish a local funding pool like what we're talking about, the 2 per team this year. But also to provide input on things like 90% payment rate practices that have been mentioned a couple times. Priority areas, any like state or local official things, things like that. So how that works, that's going to be happening beginning next week, and all of the conferences are going to be followed up by a teleconference for any, open-ended discussions for things that aren't covered in the survey. That information is going to be rolled up on the team level and provided to the state technical advisory committee, and that is June 18th. And then that's going to be that for making considerations and recommendations for FY21 funding goals for the state practice increase for the 10 priority practices and things like that. That's about it. Or anything part of this discussion.
No, that's it. Thank you. So again, we're trying really hard to get through the transition period. If you want to get an update on the number of applications and stuff like that, I think that was one of the transactions that Lori, I'll go touch on afterwards.
I'm going to hit real quick. I'm seeing in the chat box that a couple people had a hard time getting in on the audio, and that might be due to we had some computer issues. If you joined us later than when we started, we had some computer issues. So if anybody has any questions, I've updated the slide here so that you can see my contact information, and please call my cell phone. And also, that's my email address, so you can send me questions, and I can direct you to the correct field office or answer your questions there. As far as what we have for our programs for applications, so for our CSP renewals, we had a total of 38 eligible applications that were in the process of going through the ranking and selecting them for contracting. As I had stated earlier, we have, starting tomorrow is the 30-day open period for our CSP Classic program. I do not know how many applications we have. If you weren't selected in previous years, your application can roll over, but until the end of that 30-day application period, I don't know how many applications we have in the system. For our EQIP program, we had over 400, and I think it was either 485 or 483 eligible applications that were submitted statewide for all of our EQIP funding. So it's pretty substantial. Last year we contracted a little over 300 contracts, so I don't see an issue with us contracting that this year. We received the same amount of funds this year as we did last. The only thing that could be of issue to reduce the quantity of contracts we could have is with this higher payment rate for these top 10 practices or the source water areas, since they are increasing from 75% payment rate to a 90% payment rate, some of our funds could go to those additional cost increases. And so we could see a reduction in our contracting numbers. I won't know until the end of the fiscal year when we finish up our contracting season of where we're at. But what I typically do is provide a status end of the year performance to the SAC and to the NRCS state leadership so that they can see where we are. And this helps us provide contracting suggestions for next fiscal year that we work with the SAC on. So that's all I have, unless anybody has any other questions on our programs.
If the CSP contract expired in 2020, they assigned down,
If their CSP contract expired at the in 2020, so it'll be in September, yes. If they want to keep it going, they need to get in and apply now. Once again, contact your local service center, schedule an appointment with the NRCS staff person, and your specific situation is working with the DC or the planner in the office is most important to work with. Here at headquarters or here at the state office, I have no idea what your contact entails and some of the particulars there. So I highly advise you to work with your local NRCS staff.
So I believe we had a question about staffing, and so I finally, after 2 years of nothing but bad news, actually have some good news. Because our staffing numbers were reduced so much, we were at one time at 115, 120. We were put on a priority list this year because we're less than 90%. There are a few states out there, believe it or not, that are not at 90% capacity. And so we were put on a priority list, and we were also assigned a new HR specialist in goodness. Since that person has come on board with us in the last 2 months, we have been able to do work on all 32 vacancies that we have. We have 14 final job offers, meaning we have 14 staff people that are going to report here shortly. Actually, our budget person reported yesterday, yay. And then we have, I believe it's 15 or 16 positions that have been advertised or re-advertised in some sort, and they are actually being either selected or we're waiting on the panel for those positions. And then we have an additional 7 that we will move forward to actually get an advertisement out and get it out on the street. So we've got great movement. Part of our delay right now is because of the COVID-19. We're seeing some slowdown on our relocation services as far as getting staff here. But we will have a state agronomist. That person should report here by mid-June. We have some of the field office staff that we have reporting, for example, the district conservationist position in West Blues team, which is out of Davenport, has been filled. That person should be here by June 15th. We're trying to see if we can kind of move her out. We might be able to move her out into mid-May, but we're trying to see how fast the relocation team will work on processing their information. We have advertised a lot of the technicians, the silicon. The other thing we were able to do, and again, maybe I pushed the issue, but And we worked really, really hard, and we were able to get all of our technicians and our CETs, our civil engineering techs, an upgrade. We were able to upgrade all of those employees so they were able to get a higher grade because of the kind of complexity of the work that they're doing. They all qualified for the higher grade level. So we also did that too. So we are seeing quite a bit of movement. So stay tuned. Again, we should have new people in those offices fairly quickly. I believe all of our field plans and resource concentrations and technicians have been advertised. We are having a little bit of trouble with areas like Republic, Yakima, and it seems like there was one other location. We've advertised that job 3 times now. This will be our 3rd time, and we've gotten no applicants. So we are trying to look where we're going to go what we call out of the agency and go out of federal government service to try and fill those positions. I'll give an example. The Central Area Conservationist position, believe it or not, I went out with the position about 5 months ago. I got 1 applicant. I turned it back. I have a standard in this state. If we only get 1 applicant for a job, we go out and find another effort without even looking at the panel. We send it back because especially we feel like we should be able to find good qualified candidates and have the competition in finding those candidates. And so we're looking at other sources and methods of advertising. And so the Central Area Conservation position makes USDA-wide. So that opens it up to other agencies within USDA also applying for that position. So stay tuned. That position closed 2 weeks ago, and I'm waiting on the panel to make a selection. So we've got good movement. You should see, again, we should onboard close to 32 employees in the next 2 to 3 months. That's where we're at, Lori, on staffing. Any other questions for us? And we'll give you back some time here. Again, please feel free. He's got his information available. I think most of you know how to get a hold of me too. And you can work through Lori if you have anything. Guys, one area I know Lori and them have been helping you is National Office is asking for a status of the situation out there. Are we dumping mouths? Are we dumping products? Are we happening to dispose of animals, things like this? So headquarters is working on trying to figure a way to help producers get through this difficult economic time. Lori sent me a great list. I sent it to headquarters. I shared it with some of our other agriculture or USDA agencies and see if we can't get resources through the stimulus package to be able to help you. So we are working on those kind of things to try to be available to assist. So anything we can do, please keep us in the loop and keep us notified of what's going on out there and see if there's a way that we can help the circumstances situation. So with that, Lori, I'm going to turn it back to you. I think we can close it up. And I want to thank the lead growers